But the way the administrators have handled the whole situation is embarrassing.
You're looking at it from a Derby fan's perspective and thinking, why on earth is it taking this long?
You think they can get in the top two?
I still have this underlying belief that they can. Yes, absolutely.
Barnsley are the team with momentum. Definitely they can pull off the great escape, and it'll be one hell of a great escape at that.
I'm looking at Bournemouth's run of games towards the end of the season, and they are rough. Their last 9 games are absolutely horrendous. I would not want to be in Bournemouth's position.
And if Forest want to get in the top 6, they're going to have to come out of March smelling of roses.
It's go out syndrome, isn't it? Where they start to convince you that they could finish in the top 6 and ultimately start to tail off.
If anything, I think they may have just left it a bit too late.
His time at Aston Villa was summed up perfectly with him being unable to get out of his house for a training session.
Yeah, it will be always remembered for Gate, won't it? 13 million quid. Wages can't have been too cheap either, and they didn't get their money back at all. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Stopwatch. It's the Championship show with a little twist. It's 5 topics, 2-minute timer, 2 hosts. With Ryan and Justin from the Second Tier podcast. Let's get right into it. With Derby's administrators still to name a preferred bidder, what's your take on the club's future, Justin Peach?
It's obviously uncertain. I think the amount of time and the amount of delays there have been to even naming a preferred bidder is quite concerning. But at the same time, the administrators have shown the EFL that there are projected funds until the end of the season, so it does give Derby fans some reprieve. But at the same time, you're looking at it from a Derby fan's perspective and thinking, why on earth is it taking this long? Why on earth have you not foreseen the issues that you've come across right now? We all knew the circumstances Derby are in. It seems that the administrators have been surprised by a couple of things, but they're not shedding any light, and that's the problem. They're not being transparent enough with the supporters.
They're absolutely not. It does seem like Derby's future now is okay. I'm going to say that while touching wood, but it seems like it'll be very unlikely if Derby County went out of business at this point. But the way the administrators have handled the whole situation is embarrassing. Naming deadlines for themselves and then not following up on those deadlines is just ridiculous. The lack of communication they've had with the fans, shambolic. And then we've had this narrative for months now, haven't we, that the main stumbling block was the legal claims by Middlesbrough and Wickham. They're mostly off the table now, and still we haven't had any answers. So the question is, why are we still having these delays? Can't we just move on and let Derby get on with fighting to stay up this season or whatever happens afterwards? It's ridiculous, and it is worth pointing out the administrators have made, by my calculations, 5 million quid from being in Derby now for, 5 months? And it's only that bill is going to get higher and higher the longer they stay in. So it's ridiculous, quite frankly. Justin, what's the next topic?
After 3 wins in 4, can Barnsley pull off the great escape? And where has this run of form come from?
Well, this run of form has come from mainly the 2 signings. Amin Bassi from Metz on loan and Domingos Quina, who's on loan from Watford. Both have been absolutely brilliant since coming in. I mean, Quina was an impressive signing in itself, but he's turned out to be even better than I expected. And Bassi, I didn't know too much about, but he's been sensational since coming in. But he's Poya Asbaghi, the manager, his figuring out what the best system is for the players has also worked wonders as well, hasn't it, Justin?
Yeah, changing to a 4-2-3-1 has been a massive change. Obviously, it feels like Barnsley have been playing 3 at the back for about 3 or 4 years now, but they've obviously started to evolve, and as Barghi's gone with that 4-2-3-1, and there's a little bit more patience about how they play, a little bit less direct. And Carlton Morris as a number 9 as well has transformed how Barnsley attack, and obviously having the likes of Bassi and Domingos Quina supporting an attack, the quality that they have has been on show. Very, very, it's been very apparent the change in the style of play and the teams that they've had an impact on. So, yeah, that formation change and slight personnel changes has helped massively, because we know there are good players at Barnsley. It's just been getting the right system, right formation, and right personnel in place to get them ticking, and they have. Can they stay up? I still think it's unlikely.
I think they've got as good a chance as anyone else at the moment. I think it's all about momentum at the moment with the 4 teams down there, because each team has had their own periods of momentum. This is the first time Barnsley have had any momentum. But you look at where they are now. If Reading continue to struggle, we don't really know where they are at the moment after they were pretty poor against Blackpool. But if they've lost all their momentum, Barnsley are the team with momentum. Definitely they can pull off the Great Escape, and it'll be one hell of a Great Escape at that. Justin, in terms of the promotion race, which side do you think the month of March is the most important for?
I'm going to say Blackburn, and the reason why I'm going to say Blackburn is because I still have this belief that they can get into the top 2. I'm looking at Bournemouth's run of games towards the end of the season, and they are rough. Their last 9 games are absolutely horrendous. I would not want to be in Bournemouth's position, and I think that Blackburn are in a much better position than Huddersfield as well. When you consider the strength and depth in attack that Blackburn have got, they've still got obviously Ben Brereton Diaz, Talisman to come back in, and we're starting to see them pick up in terms of performances again. Creating chances has never been a problem. It's just putting them away. So I do think the month of March, if they can get some wins, they can still get into that top 2. And they've got to stay in the top 6 as well.
You think they can get in the top 2?
I still have this belief, this underlying belief that they can. Yes, absolutely.
I don't think there are many Blackburn fans who are believing that anymore, but suit yourself. For me, the most important month this is for Nottingham Forest, mainly because of the teams they've got to play. We all know Forest have been outside the playoffs for quite a while now, and they have kept winning games and getting good results, but don't seem to be getting any closer to the playoffs. They just seem to be stuck around 8th all the time. But now you look at the games they've got coming up. They've got 3 of the games they've got in March are against teams who are directly challenging for the playoffs. And then they've also got a contest against Fulham as well, which is never going to be easy in itself. So I think Forest have probably got the trickiest March out of all the teams who are aiming for the playoffs this season. And if Forest want to get in the top 6, they're going to have to come out of March smelling of roses. So I think Forest definitely the side who need to have a good March. What do you think, Justin? Do you think Forest has still got a good chance of getting in the playoffs, and does a lot depend on how they do in March?
They absolutely do. March is a big month for a lot of teams. Obviously, there's a 2-week break. There's a 2-week break because of the international games. But I think if you gather momentum in March and you go into April where there's a lot of games, March is a massive month. And as you say, for Forest, it's a really good chance for them to make up ground on those teams who are above them and put up a gap between them for the teams that are behind them.
Absolutely. Justin, what's next topic?
After 4 wins on the trot, do you think Millwall can still reach the playoffs?
It's very hard to say with Millwall. They have been brilliant recently, it's got to be said. But you're looking at the table, 5-point gap, still very catchable, really. But there are so many teams who are going for the top 6 that it's going to be tricky. And the only way I could see them getting in the top 6 is if they continue this run of form pretty much until the end of the season now. They have got plenty of positives. Jed Wallace is playing as well as Jed Wallace ever has done for Millwall. Defensively, they look solid. Jake Cooper has been class as always at the back. But then they've had other players who have been in brilliant form recently. Matt Namara, right wing back, has been class. Mason Bennett has been playing the best he's ever played at championship level. So there's plenty of positives for Millwall. It's difficult to say whether they'll get in the top 6, though, because we have had this before, haven't they, where they've started to look quite good for the playoffs and then suddenly they'll just tail off and draw 5 games in a row.
It's go out syndrome, isn't it, where they start to convince you that they could finish in the top 6 and ultimately start to tail off. But everything's in place for Millwall to make that assault on the top 6. They just have to carry on this run of form. It's just, as you say, it's just whether or not it's too much for this side. They've got to be very consistent, which is something that Gary Rowett teams do struggle with. And as you say, there's 13 games left for Millwall. You're looking at 8 wins in those 13 games to really solidify their place in the top 6. It's something that's going to be quite difficult, especially a team that is currently stretched because of injuries as well. So whether or not we see this run of form carrying on, I don't know, but I do think they do have a very small chance, very slim chance of making that top 6. And that's based purely on their ability to grind games out and make teams look ugly, if that makes sense.
Yeah. If anything, I think they may have just left it a bit too late, haven't they? Because they needed to start picking up results earlier in the season, but now they may have left it too late and they're having to make up ground on a lot of teams who are also in good form at the moment. Finally, just in this second tier retro time, favourite part of the show, I always say, who is the worst pound for pound signing in Championship history? Who are you saying?
Yeah, there's been quite a few, hasn't there? Especially with teams over the recent years just throwing money at anybody. But the one that sticks out for me is Ross McCormack to Aston Villa for £13 million and rumoured salary of around 60 grand a week. Yeah, it was quite scary, wasn't it? The amount of money they were spending, and obviously Ross McCormack was the was the creme de la creme of that spending spree, and ultimately the amount of games he played and the amount of goals he scored didn't really justify that price tag. And the fact that his time at Aston Villa was summed up perfectly with him being unable to get out of his house for a training session. Steve Bruce had to call him up and ask him why he wasn't at training. Well, it's because his garden gate wouldn't open. His career at Aston Villa will definitely be forgotten.
Yeah, it will be always remembered for gate, won't it? For me, the worst pound for pound signing in Championship history is João Carvalho at Forest, which may upset Forest fans because he was someone who Forest fans were desperate to be a success at the City ground. He had a decent first season. He didn't have as much of an impact, I think, as many people are expecting. But as far as first seasons go, it was all right. But then after that, he just pretty much disappeared off the face of the earth. 13 million quid. Wages can't have been too cheap either. And they didn't get their money back at all for that. I think they did get the money back in, literal sense later on, which is by the by, but we'll leave that there. But yeah, João Carvalho, Forest fans wanted him to be a success, but he just didn't pay it back at all and ended up being more of a bench warmer in the end, didn't he? When when they spent 13 million quid on him, he definitely wasn't giving the impact that I think many people were hoping or expecting for that matter. And there we go, episode 24 of the Stopwatch. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Please let us know who you think is the worst pound for pound signing, it's easy for me to say, in Championship history. Because there have been quite a few. I imagine there were quite a few for just each individual team over the years. But as well, drop us a like if you enjoyed, and please subscribe for more content like this within the Second Tier Podcast. You can find us at Second Tier Show on Twitter. I'm Ryan Dilks1. That's Justin Peach 27. And thank you for watching.